Hi everyone, and welcome back to another Wellness Wednesday. My name is Molly and I am the Wellness Supervisor here at Bircham Hills. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about a question that we've gotten quite a bit from our residents and visitors, which is, why are we, still wearing masks? Why do we have to wear masks even after having our vaccination? Or, when do we think we'll be able to stop wearing masks? And I think that these are extremely valid questions. I think this is something that is kind of on the forefront of everybody's mind as, we await our vaccines, we await others to get their vaccines, and, we wait for society to kind of make this shift towards kind of a semblance of normalcy, right? So I thought that I would spend a little bit of time talking about, the reasoning behind that, like how masks help, and kind of what we can expect moving forward. So let's go ahead and get started here. So, as I'm sure we're all aware, when we properly wear a mask, we want it to cover both our nose and our mouth. So it fits like so. And one of the reasons that we are so strict, not we as in Bircham, but just, the CDC guidelines in general, about wearing it over both your nose and your mouth, it has to do with a couple different things. So the first is the fact that we know that COVID-19 is a respiratory virus, right? And when we think about passageways into our lungs, we have two of them right here, right? Breathing in through our nose and breathing in through our mouth. Another reason is because inside our mouth and inside our nose, we have mucous membranes. And that is actually probably the main way that viruses enter into our body, is when they are able to make contact with those mucous membranes and enter that way. So wearing the mask over our nose and our mouth helps to prevent the viruses from reaching those mucous membranes. We also have mucous membranes here in our eyes, and that's one of the reasons why one of the recommendations is to, wash your hands frequently and avoid touching your face. So that's all information I'm sure we've heard countless times before, so you don't need me to reiterate that further. If you've been vaccinated, why still wear the mask, right? I know that this is something we're all really curious about, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I have all the answers, but I can share with you what I do know and, what I understand the situation to be. And one thing I think that's really important for us to remember is that vaccines are preventative drugs. They're not like curative drugs. They're not seeking to cure us of the virus, rather they're seeking to prevent us from getting them. And I think a lot of times there's a bit of confusion between that, right? Getting the vaccine isn't, if you have the virus, isn't going to, make the virus go away and cure you, right? What it does is it helps to boost your immune system so that you're lessening the chances of contracting it, or if you do, you're not getting it as severely as you could. So even after we're vaccinated and we have, all of these extra antibodies now, and we know that they're going to be so much more effective at fighting off the virus if it comes into contact with us, it doesn't prevent the virus from still having that ability, to get into our bodies. One of the things that they're talking about is the emergence of new strains of the virus. And I know I've had a couple residents ask me about that, so I can give a short explanation. So one of the things that happens with viruses, especially RNA viruses, is that when they replicate inside our body, they are actually having to use our cells' mechanics, so to speak, to replicate their genetic information. So if you go back a couple videos, I talked at one point about how the vaccines work, how viruses replicate inside our body. So if you're a little lost on what I'm saying, that's a good video to reference back to. But essentially what happens though is when a virus enters our body, it inserts its genetic information into our cell, and it uses our cell's processes that it uses to replicate its own DNA or RNA. With this type of virus, every single time that virus is transmitted from one person to another, it picks up a little bit of that person's DNA. A little bit of their genetic information, moves on to the next person, infects them, picks up a little bit of their genetic information, a little bit of their DNA, moves on to the next person. And so gradually, as it is transmitted more and more and more, it's getting more and more and more of that input, and that is ultimately where we start to see those variations and different strains come about, because it's mutating, right? So that's one of the reasons why we're really trying to stop the spread of the virus, not just from a health perspective, but also because the less that it spreads, the less that it's going to mutate, and the more effective we can, make this vaccine against it. But again, so why the masks? So we know, again, we are talking about how the masks help to prevent those viruses and those droplets from coming into our nose and into our mouth, right? And I know that there are some skeptics out there who say, well, I can still smell things when I have my mask on, so if I can still smell things, how is that going to, really prevent the virus? And my answer to that is it's the same reason you wouldn't try to carry a full-length couch width-wise through a doorway, right? Size matters. So we know that viruses are very, very small. And so kind of just by rationale, we'd think, well, shouldn't it be able to pass through my mask then? And the reason this isn't the case is because viruses have to travel within droplets, like, think spit droplets, so to speak. And those droplets are what are big. And so when they get caught in the mask, right, the droplet gets prevented and stuck on the mask, then the virus doesn't go any further either. I know that there have been some discussions about whether you should wear, one mask or two masks, or, masks with multiple layers. And again, think about the Swiss cheese method. My professor explained it to us like this, and I thought it was really great. So you think about a piece of Swiss cheese, and it has a bunch of holes in it, right? And even though most of it is solid, there are still a few points where things can get through, right? So now I add another piece of Swiss cheese, and the holes don't all line up, so there's less space, for things to get through. And then you add another layer of Swiss cheese, and so on and so forth. So hopefully that example makes sense. One of the easiest things we can do, though, as a society is, wearing our masks to not only protect ourselves, but to protect those around us who maybe wouldn't do so well if they were to encounter the virus. And I know here at Bircham, that's our residents, right? As we get older, our immune systems don't work as well. A lot of our residents have, secondary conditions like COPD, or they've had, surgeries on their heart, or they're battling cancer, right? And so they are a more vulnerable population. So we want to do everything in our power to make sure that we're taking care of them and minimizing their potential exposure as much as we can. I know that, wearing a mask can sometimes seem a bit, just, it's tiring, right? And we're ready for things to go back to the way that they are. But what we're hoping will happen is that as more and more people are able to get vaccinated, as the virus transmission starts to decrease, right? Eventually, we'll hopefully be able to cut back and, be able to go back to a time where we're not having to wear masks as much. But in the meantime, masks are still very effective at preventing the spread of the virus, right? And not only catching your droplets before they spread, but also preventing somebody else's droplets, from getting to you. And it's just an extra layer, of safety on top of if you've had that vaccination. So I know I didn't go very, deep into the science. I think the best thing any of us can do at this point is just really, listen to what the CDC is saying, because even though things are changing, it's important to remember that what we're seeing isn't a lack of understanding of what's going on. What we're seeing is the scientific process kind of unfolding in real time, right? That's a big part of science, is we question it, we test it. If our hypothesis holds up, we keep testing it, but if it doesn't, then we change what we thought we knew, right? We change the question, we change our approach. And as we continue to learn more and more about the virus, that's ultimately what we're going to expect to happen. That doesn't make it any less frustrating. I think we're all to a point where we're feeling a little burnt out and really wanting for things to settle back into some sort of normalcy. I know I for sure am, and I know our residents are. But, if we just band together, try to stay optimistic, take good care of ourselves, take good care of each other, we will make it through this, out the other side, and we'll all be better for it. So I will leave you with those thoughts. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wellness Wednesday, and we'll see you here again next week. Thank you.